As of August 2021, the Nintendo Switch console is on track to becoming one of, if not the best, sold consoles in history. The handheld Nintendo console was launched in 2017 and has sold over 107 million units. The hardware was released to much fanfare, promising a true hybrid between the living room entertainment system that characterized the previous Nintendo consoles like the Wii and Wii U, and the handheld hardware made to be taken on the road like the Nintendo SD or the Game Boy. After the abysmal commercial failure of the previous entertainment system, the Wii U, Nintendo was desiring to once again wrestle some market presence from their competitors, primarily Sony with their PlayStation and Microsoft with the Xbox. However, Nintendo was left in a bind as to what to do next. Prior to the launch of the Nintendo Switch, the video game company had to make an important decision. Which market were they gonna try to expand their presence on? Generally speaking, when it comes to entertainment systems, there are handhelds, like the Nintendo SD, and stay-at-home consoles, like the PS4. Nintendo had been successful in both of these markets prior to 2017. The Nintendo DS, released in 2004, remains the best-selling portable hardware in the market, with an astounding 154 million units sold, a figure that is only closely followed by the DS' older sister, the Game Boy, at 118 million. Nintendo knew that there was gold in the handheld world, but also, prior to the Wii U failure, they had come off the heels of the success of the original Wii, which has sold over 100 million units since its release in 2006. I don't know if you remember just how pervasive the Wii U was in the late 2000s. It was something that I had never experienced before. I remember vividly how my grandparents got a Wii just because of their absolute amazement at the fact that you could play golf in Wii Sports. And I also remember how me and my brother convinced them to get the first Mario Galaxy and quickly took over their living room, to the point that my grandpa had to hush us away to play some Wii Sports. That was the absolute cross-sectional appeal of Nintendo's family-friendly entertainment system for every persona, that to a certain degree still keeps to this day. So, what was gonna be? Was Nintendo gonna create the new and improved Nintendo SD? Or were they gonna try to catch the lightning in a bottle that was the Wii U all over again? Well, as we know, they decided to go for both. The Nintendo Switch, to a large degree, incorporated the best sides of both a handheld and a stay-at-home console. Children can take it in the car, in long rides, and parents can play it docked to the TV once they get home after work. It incorporates a tactile screen like the SD, and the motion sensor controls that allow them to replicate the experience of swinging controllers around to simulate everything from Link's sword to a golf club. Also, many of the Switch's games, partially because of Nintendo's creative philosophy and partly because of marketing savvy, can be played in short bursts of activity that can start and end as quickly or last as long as the player wants to. There are over 800 power moons to collect in Super Mario Odyssey, 120 shrines to complete in Breath of the Wild, not to mention the granddaddy of all post-game time black holes, completing the Pokédex. All of these actions are examples of the continuous gameplay loop that Nintendo wants players to run through as many times as they want, for as long as they can. Additionally, the central gameplay loop is somewhat removed from the main story told by the game, which means that the user can run through the gameplay loop as many times as he or she wants during a playing session without affecting the progress of the story. Players that are pressed for time during their bus commute to work might boot up the Switch to get a couple of moons or complete a shrine in a burst of interactivity that lasts a short span, without necessarily damaging the overall experience. But, if they so desire, they can extend their play session as much as required, since most of the Switch's games allow users to run through the gameplay loop as many times as needed, be it completed shrines in Zelda, shiny hunting in Pokémon, or cleaning rooms in Luigi's Mansion 3. Additionally, as I mentioned before, Nintendo's video games rarely focus on a complex story, with high and low character points that the player must follow across the unfolding of the events of the game, so the impact on the story of short playing sessions is minimized. Figures at Nintendo, like the legendary creator of the Super Mario franchise Shigeru Miyamoto, have constantly mentioned that their approach to creating games is different from that followed by other companies in the industry. That their focus when creating a game does not lie in story, realistic graphics, or complex characters, but rather is a fun and engaging gameplay loop that carries the player through environments where the gameplay loop is put to the test. Take for example Cappy's ability to take over enemies in Mario Odyssey. This is a good example of this philosophy. Yeah, the story is about rescuing Peach from the clutches of Bowser and ruining their wedding, but the player will only spend about 1% of the playing time actively engaged in this storyline. More often than not, the story is an excuse for the gameplay loop gathering moons to power the Odyssey. Luigi's Mansion 3, conversely, is about rescuing Mario, Peach, and some Toads from King Boo, but the game loop is about catching ghosts with the Poltergust. This game is a particularly dramatic example of Nintendo's focus on gameplay, since of the 17 floors of the hotel that you visit in Luigi's Mansion, you will only actively be looking for Mario in 2. The rest is pure gameplay loop. Perhaps this point is more easily understood in contrast. Think of some of the cinematic, story-driven games of the last decade: God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, or The Last of Us. Technically, the player could, if they wish for some reason, only play 5 minutes and stop, but that would compromise the experience tremendously. I mean, are you really gonna only play through a section of God of War when the last cutscene left Atreus struggling to breathe? Also, this might not apply to cinematic games so much because they were not meant to be consumed that way. Sony knows that players will experience God of War at home, when they have nothing to do and nothing around them that would necessarily cut the play session short, while Nintendo is the complete opposite, and their flexible games allow for this brilliant in-between. Note that this is not a critique at all to Nintendo or the cinematic games that Sony puts out. I am personally a sucker for tight gameplay loops that are rewarding, but to this day, I would still say that above all of the Marios and Pokémons of the world, Kratos still reigns supreme in my pantheon of video game characters. This underlying creative philosophy, married with the hybrid approach to gaming that the Switch brings to the table, have revolutionized the position that Nintendo has in the market. During the mid-2010s, Nintendo had come off the heels of the Wii U debacle, a humility cure for those who had enjoyed a position of power in the industry during the long reign of the original Wii. A painful experience that prompted an extreme soul-searching effort at the Japanese game maker. And from the ashes of all of those unsold Wii U's, a new, more daring Nintendo emerged, one brave enough to test a type of hardware that had not found a market fit before, and clever enough to wrap their creative philosophy around such hardware, a business strategy as core to Nintendo's identity as the Red Plumber himself. Thank you for watching Rebel Economics. I have always been fascinated about Nintendo's philosophy for developing games, their relentless focus on gameplay, sometimes to the detriment of other aspects of the gaming experience, like story or complex characters. But I believe it is a thing of beauty how they were able to regain authority and presence in the market while remaining true to their identity, their IPs, and their philosophy. Now, if you like this video, please consider leaving a like and maybe even subscribing. We have another video detailing the selling strategies that Nintendo used to put the Switch at the pedestal it now rests at, in all the ranks of the best-selling consoles of all time, so you maybe should check that. So, I hope you had a good time, and I will see you in the next video.